Good afternoon, and welcome to the Road to Recovery, the Road to Freedom with Mark. This is my 28-minute slot every Friday where I talk to you about mental health, which is one of my pet subjects. This is what this show is all about, and I also, on a lighter side, bring to you some stories of my adventures around the world and around New Zealand. When I was a young man and fit and happy and healthy, and I guess there to remind me that things can come right again and things can be good again. But I just would like to kick off the show by just a little mention, a goodbye to a great friend, a great man of ours in the Wairarapa, to BJ. Sir Brian Lahore was a truly great man. A mighty Taura has fallen, and he's one we're never going to be able to replace. I've spent a lot of time in the Wairarapa over the years. I've frequented Lake Fury, I don't know how many times, and you always travel through Puranaia to get there, and I met the big guy a couple of times, and it's funny. I remember the first time I met him, I said g'day and shook his hand, and my hand, from the tip of my finger to the base of my hand, reached across his palm. He had hands like Christmas hams. He was a big dude. But, as an All Black, apart from being a great captain and a great leader, he would run in the loose, out wide like Colin Meads did. And, he caused the opposition some trouble. He was a hell of a strong man. And he was more than just physically strong. He was mentally and spiritually strong, kind and generous, and he did so much for the Wairarapa, for his community. He just always gave, but even more than that, for his country. What he did for the 87 All Blacks, he helped us get across the line, and he wasn't the sort of person who would shout and perform. He was a quiet but firm man of great intelligence and an enormous compassion. He was a great tennis player as well, not just an All Black. He was a very gifted sportsman. But I think even more, if it is possible, even more than his great achievements on the field were his achievements off the field in how he managed to help his community in so many ways, and there aren't many people in the Wairarapa who don't know him or who weren't touched in some way by his kindness and generosity. I'm excuse me if I'm breaking up a little here, but guys like that don't come along very often in a lifetime, and my sincere condolences go out to his family. We will miss him always. Thank you, Brian, for everything you've done for us. Right, well, today I want to talk about a few things. It's August the 9th, and on a happy note, driving in today, I was just astounded by how many lammies are out there in the fields, and daffodils everywhere. It seems that spring has sprung particularly early this year. There's rhododendrons and magnolia in full flower, and it always raises my spirits at this time of year to see, new life. And I always try to be mindful these days and appreciative of all of the small things in life, the little things. It's the little things that really matter. And I used to hate things like Christmas and all this nonsense, the way that the retailers treat you like some kind of commodity, to some cash cow to be milked. I hate that insidious side of things. But what I've learned as I've got a little older is to enjoy those small things in life that really matter. Friends, family, and especially this time of year when new life comes into this world, and to revel in it, to take some joy from that. You see those innocent little creatures in the fields, and you can't help but smile. It's a really, really great thing, a great time of year. So, I feel my spirits lift as we shake off the cold of winter. There's still snow up on the ranges, especially today. I was really quite shocked at how much snow there was today. But hey, look, the warmer weather is just around the corner, so get out and enjoy it as much as you can. I want to say a special hi to all the good folks up in the Hawke's Bay. It's great to have you along. It's really good that we're starting to spread the word a little bit and that other people are getting involved, because I at least consider the work I do to be extremely important. Now, I'm not getting paid to do this. I have no motivation whatsoever other than to help people, and that's what Arrow Radio is all about. It's about community, it's about putting people in touch, and it's about helping people any way we can, and especially through my personal experiences. I'm not some trained professional psychologist who's led a sweet little life in a shoebox full of candy floss. I have lived a pretty rugged life over the years, and I've met a lot of people who are mentally unwell, as you do. When you move in those circles, your life becomes very, very different, and you talk and you share people's personal experiences. And I have met a lot of very ill, broken people, and it's funny, they're all singing from the same song sheet. And to give you an idea, the principal of my intermediate school died in prison serving a term for having raped and molested young boys for a period of decades. This is what went on in my life. I remember Michael Fay, the first kid who hung himself in the garage. I can still picture his face, and I know why. This was something that was swept under the carpet and is only now beginning to come out. And, I don't trust politicians. I have no faith in them. But I must say it is very, very good to see some people stepping up. And especially I would like to take my hat off to Jacinda Ardern, who seems to me to be somebody who is quite genuine in her desire to heal this country and make it better. And that is pretty rare in a politician. I cannot believe the amount of support for their opposition. That's something like 45% for a party who consistently failed us for a decade and ran down the health system and the education system to the point where we had the biggest strike in the history of our country, and yet still they enjoy the majority of support. I cannot fathom that, and that's your fault. You're supporting them. I'm not. In fact, I don't support either. I didn't vote for any of those parties. I am not wearing any political hat here. What I am recognising is good work where it is done, and it is great. It is amazing that people like John Kerwin and Mike King have come on board and started this, but they have not gone far enough, nor has the government, and they probably won't. But I will. And long after this is no longer the flavour of the month, I will continue doing my work because I live in it. I am it. And unfortunately, I have the feeling I always will be. So my job is to help. Right? My job is to help as many people as I can with my personal experiences, and to help with ideas of how we can improve things. And I am not the sort of person that throws stones and criticises without providing solutions, real, genuine, good ideas about how we can make things better. Now, I touched upon paedophilia, and I realise that some of the stuff that I talk about in my show is quite controversial, and it is. Mental health is one of those things that is a difficult, awkward, prickly subject, and I do not mean to offend or hurt anybody in any way. Please understand that I have been through this myself, so I understand to the core of my being what this is like. Now, what we tend to do is we punish people who have hurt others, and we lock them away. And maybe they'll get shivved by an inmate, goody, yeah, you think? Locking people up is society's revenge. That's what it is. Let's not beat about the bush here. It is our revenge. We are punishing them. We are getting them back for the evil deeds they've done, and we want to hurt them. We want our revenge. Well, I'll tell you this. Revenge is hollow. It is a hollow thing. It achieves nothing. It fixes nothing. What we need to do is we need to monitor these individuals when they are released from prison, which is inevitable, and they are returned to a community, which is inevitable. No parent wants a child molester living down the road from their kid's school. Nobody wants that. So how do we protect our children, our most vulnerable, the mokopuna, the kids, the innocent ones? How do we ensure that they are safe? It is really, really simple. Anybody who is released from prison early is monitored by a parole officer. What we need is for that person to check in every single day of their lives, with their officer. They need to be visited once a week. They need to have 24-hour access to an emergency line where they can ring somebody and say, look, I'm having bad thoughts, or I'm having a bad day and I need help. Because it is about help. It is about establishing trust with the community. The parents need to know that these people are being monitored, not punished, but monitored, watched all of the time, every single day for the rest of their lives. This is not, people who do these sort of things, it doesn't just one day dissipate into thin air. They are what they are, and I absolutely guarantee you this. Pretty much 100% of all of the people that perpetrate these evil crimes have been subjected to that themselves. You talk to them. I have talked to them. I have talked to many of them, unfortunately. It kind of gives me the creeps when I do, but here's the rub of it. Those people were subjected to violence and rape themselves. Now, that doesn't make you a perpetrator in itself, but it does affect your life. It affects your life, your family, your relationships, and should you have children, it affects their lives as well. This goes on forever. And you will find that the perpetrators have been subjected to this themselves, and not all but some will take that offending against them and pass it on. Violence begets violence. Molestation begets molestation. These people continue this on because that's how the human mind works. Monkey see, monkey does. You get subjected to this, and that's what you become. And that is the cycle that we need to break. And once that cycle is broken, it is over. It is over forever. We need to ensure that people can live their lives in freedom, because we don't have the guts to hang them from lampposts. That's not our society. It's not the way we work. It's not what we do. We allow people to re-enter our society after terrible, terrible offending. So we need to ensure that they are safe and we are safe and we are all protected. I am not talking about continually punishing them because that achieves nothing. I am talking about monitoring and making safe. I am talking about these people coming in and talking to a psychologist every single week to see, are they a risk? Are they doing anything? Are they getting better? Are they getting worse? How are they feeling? Let's make sure that everybody is protected. Now, there will come a time in the future when I will start a pressure group on politicians to ensure that things like this are done, because quite frankly, at the moment, not enough is being done. Right, well, that's my little piece for today, and I'm going to crack on with the story very shortly. But first, I just want to say thank you very much to all of the sponsors for Arrow Radio, to Wairarapa TV. Thank you very much for allowing me to do my thing, for helping us and coming on board. It is great to have you, and most especially to Michael and Veronica, who have supported me throughout the years, continue to do so. And this show actually costs money to run, but there's no support from me, unfortunately. The government doesn't help us out whatsoever. I mean, you know, it's that's just the reality of it. That's the bottom line. So if you know of anyone who wants to help out with this radio station, you know, give us some financial support, would be very much appreciated. It is a not-for-profit organisation that gives people like me a voice where we would otherwise not have one. So thank you very much, Michael and Veronica. I hope people listen and get in behind the radio station and support. Right, time's a ticking, so I better get cracking on with this story. I hope you enjoy this one. This is a perler. This is called The Top of the South, a place in my heart. My family moved to Wellington in 1969. We got our first house in Lower Hutt in 1970, and in that year I took my first ferry ride from the capital across Cook Strait through Queen Charlotte Sound to Picton. I was only 6 years old and had not seen very much of the world. Heading down Tory Channel in the lower half of Queen Charlotte was like a strange dream. I thought to myself, there cannot be a more spectacular or beautiful place on earth. Back in the day, many folks had a bach in the bush by the sea, but we were too poor for such a luxury. Instead, poor folks like us could take a cheap day trip to Picton, eat some fish and chips, and dream what it would be like to spend the Christmas holidays in this beautiful place. A couple of bays up from the little town of Picton, there was a school of huge tame snapper. They would ferry up boats of tourists to feed them and take photos of these huge old fish who seemed to like showing off, turning on their sides on the surface of the water as they grabbed a mouthful of food. These beautiful creatures were about 70 to a good 100 years old. Some years later, some greedy arsehole killed them all, and we all knew we would never see that kind of amazing sight ever again. Fishing was still good in Queen Charlotte in the early 70s, and I heard the legends of places like Kennaperu and Pelorus Sound, but it was to be many years before I got to go to the outer sounds. Over the next few years, I got to go down to Queen Charlotte a few times and go out fishing on the day charters out of Picton. It was wonderful to catch blue cod and snapper in those days, and the crew would fetch a sack of palmer for us at low tide. My dad wasn't really into fishing, but I had been in love with it since I was 3, and I learned everything I could from the skippers of the charters. Fishermen always play their cards pretty close to their chests, but I think they could see I was just fizzing with enthusiasm, so they became my first mentors in the fishing game. Back home, I began diving with a mate from the age of 12. We had no wetsuits, but we were young and enthusiastic. All we needed was a mask. I fished around Wellington Harbour with my mates as often as I could, first on hand lines made out of old glass Coca-Cola bottles. They were perfect when we were young, but for my 12th birthday my dad bought me a surfcaster and reel, and I never looked back. But always I was dreaming of the sounds, and wondered what lay beyond them. At the end of my 15th year, my dad took me down to the Bay of Many Coves on the west side of Queen Charlotte. It was a reward for passing school cert, and we went down for a week. It was the only holiday we ever went on together, but the best I could possibly have hoped for. I talked to a few blokes there who told me how to catch tarakihi in the cove, and Dad and I hired a dinghy and I slayed myself over a dozen. Dad wasn't quick enough to catch the fast tarakihi, but even he managed to snaffle a real nice kahawai. When we got back to shore, I had to fillet the fish and got smothered in hungry wasps all over my fish, hands, arms and face. After an hour or so, a charter pulled up to the jetty and the skipper asked if anyone wanted a flounder for dinner. My dad was standing here and told me to ask the skipper, so I piped up. "You'll have to wade in and get it, 'cause it's right down here by the boat," he told me. So I waded in with my knife, following his directions. I spotted the flounder, but the little bugger kept skirting off every time I came close. I carefully followed it for about 30 metres, then it turned and started to go deeper. I knew it was now or never. I had to go under the water with my glasses and jersey on and lunged at the fish that had hesitated just for a mo. To my amazement, I got him right through the middle and got my other hand under him and waded to shore with a flapping lemon sole pinned on my knife, to the cheers of those around. My dad didn't say a thing, but I could see the look of pride on his face. That night he insisted I cook and eat all of that delicious fish, and we drank wine and chatted long into the night. It was the closest I ever got to my father, a trip I will treasure forever. In second form, my whole class went for a school trip to the top of the south. We went to Picton, Blenheim, Lake Grasmere, then over to Havelock and Canvasstown. We got as far as Pelorus Bridge and had a wonderful time. That trip really affected me deeply, and I knew I would always have a special connection with this most beautiful part of the world. Over the next 4 years, I got down there a few more times, but never got further than the portage in Kenepuru. Then when I turned 20, I was sent to Outward Bound in Anakiwa by my work. Anakiwa is right at the toe of Queen Charlotte, and I learned a lot about the place in the 6 weeks I spent slogging my guts out on that course in the middle of winter. We kayaked a flooded Pelorus River for a few days, tramped the mountains, and camped out solo in far-flung bays. We also sailed an old whaler up Queen Charlotte to Endeavour Inlet in the storms of winter, camping at night on empty beaches. The more I learned of this magic place, the more I came to love it. The next year I headed overseas and was gone for the next 7.5 years. Often I would tell my friends in London of the beauty of the top of the south, and I always knew I would be back there one day. When I returned to New Zealand, I mucked around Wellington for a year, then decided to head down to Motueka to give the fruit picking a go. I lived there for just over a year and kept myself real busy exploring that side of the top. As far south as Ruby Bay, Moutere and Tasman, I ventured into the hills and up to Rawaka and Kaitiritiri and Marahau on the coast of Tasman Bay. The sand on the beaches, there's the most beautiful golden sand. It's a really very special place. I walked the Abel Tasman National Park, and later on went flatting at David Bath's place, where we ventured further afield. Over the treacherous Takaka Hill with the amazing Harwood's Hole, and on to Takaka and Collingwood in that very special part of the country. We travelled right around the north of Kahurangi National Park and to the west coast and the end of the road. We did some possum trapping and collected native flowers for polyurethane paperweights David made. I could only handle a year of fruit picking and sadly returned to my old stomping ground of Lower Hutt. A year later I headed back to Queen Charlotte Sound and stayed with some friends at a batch. We cruised in my mate's launch to the end of Queen Charlotte and caught some huge gurnard. It was nice to be back there, and I knew this place had truly become a part of the fabric of my life. My next trip was with my mates Murray and Marty. We drove to Pelorus Bridge just past Havelock and stayed the night. The next day we headed up the Rye Valley Road via Okiwi Bay to French Pass. The road was really narrow and windy to begin with, and only got worse. The last part was little more than a single lane cut through the side of a huge hillside. The wind blasted the dust to a blinding storm, and I had to finish the drive at night looking sideways at the bank to stop me driving off the side of the hill. We had a great time catching blue cod in French Pass and snapper in Admiralty Bay. Finally, I had to go to the top of the Sounds, and I knew we would be back sometime soon. After that, I met up with a work buddy, Brendan, whose parents had a patch of land at the end of Endeavour Inlet, at the end of Queen Charlotte Sound. We stayed there for a week, fishing for blue cod and walking around the inlet at night to Endeavour Lodge to get on the bears. It's a beautiful place with glowworms on the track around and beautiful bush all around. I suppose there's a bit of a cloud hanging over the place because of the murders of Ben and Olivia on that New Year's Day. The whole place has a bit of a tainted past, but there is something undeniably magnificent about the place, and I felt a pang of regret at having to leave. Right, I'm just going to kick on to the end here now. The last trip I went should probably have cost my life. I always wanted to own a proper launch, a 30-footer that I could cruise the Sounds in and get to the outer reaches that I had never explored. I planned to take the launch back to Wellington and visit the top of the South as often as I could by sailing over the strait to the capital. Unfortunately, I got caught in a spring storm and split the hull of my launch coming off the top of a 5-metre monster wave and nearly died out in Cook Strait. I smashed the launch so badly I had to give the smashed boat away, and so ended the last time I ventured down to my favourite place in the world. It's been a few years now since I last ventured south, and I can feel that eternal pull of the top of the South. It's only a matter of time till I answer the call of the place I have come to love so much. The end. Well, that 28 minutes flew by, so I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you very much for tuning in. Tell all your friends. Get involved in your community radio, because community is what it's really all about. And the more you get involved, I'm sure the more that you will enjoy this. There's some great shows and some great people involved in Arrow Radio. So thank you very much to all the sponsors, to Wairarapa TV, and to Michael and Veronica. And I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll catch you again next week. Bye for now.